At this point in time, Borderlands is a very well known game series. It's had a few game releases and it's even had its own movie. And with Borderlands 4 scheduled to release this September, I wanted to go back and play every Borderlands game and rank them from S tier to D tier, starting way back at the beginning with originally released in 2009 for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC, it quickly became one of my favourite games of all time back when I first played it. Now for the sake of a video, I decided to play the enhanced version of the game, which released in 2018 for the Xbox One, PS4 and PC. Borderlands starts off with an opening cutscene telling you about the story of the game. You play as one of 4 Vault Hunters: Roland the Soldier, Lilith the Siren, Mordecai the Hunter and Brick the Berserker. These 4 characters have all travelled to the planet Pandora in search of a mysterious vault which isn't even believed to exist by a lot of the population. You're guided along by a guardian angel, constantly reassuring you that the vault is real on your quest. You meet an array of memorable characters while you fight your way through a variety of different enemies, all so you can obtain all the parts of the vault key in order to finally open it.
You woke the wrong dog. Ah, yeah!
And while the story for the first Borderlands game isn't the best, it does a good enough job of telling you what you're supposed to be doing and your whole purpose of being on Pandora. My huge gripe with it is that everything is explained mainly in these radio communications called echoes.
It's come to our attention that you've been at war with elements of the local population, and you've now been contracted to assassinate one of their leaders. This type of unsanctioned mercenary activity undermines the stability of the region. You have been warned. Continued insurgent activities will not be tolerated. Abandon this futile pursuit and turn yourself in.
And the big bad of the game, Commander, still you don't even meet until the very end of the game, where it's a very brief confrontation.
You have failed to listen to Commandant Steele. I've warned you time and again, yet you persist on ignoring my orders. The contents of the vault are rightfully the property of the Atlas Corporation.
But where this game truly shines is its gameplay. As previously mentioned, you play as one of the 4 characters, and each character is unique into what they bring to the game. So in my case, I went with Brick, and one of the builds you can go with while playing as Brick is increasing your explosive damage. So this caused me to loot as many explosive weapons as I possibly could, so I can make the most of my increased damage. But then later on, I was finding myself using weapons that had a really fast fire rate, as one of my skills increased my fire rate for a short duration whenever I killed an enemy, creating a crazy fast fire rate that could melt almost any enemy in the game. This is just a slight example of what you can do in this game, and in later games as well for that fact. The core gameplay loop of this game is purely kill enemies, complete quests and get better loot, and it's such an enjoyable experience. With that being said, I'm going to put Borderlands 1 into A tier. Genuinely a really solid start for the series that has laid the foundation for years to come. Originally released for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC in 2012 before being ported over to the PS4 and Xbox One in 2015, Borderlands 2 is really the game that put the series on the map. Now, of course, technically speaking, Borderlands 1 did that, but Borderlands 2 brought in so many new players to the franchise due to its marketing, and a lot of that fanbase still hasn't even gone back and played the original game. And I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. This game is S tier. And that's simply because it takes everything Borderlands 1 does, but better. From gameplay to character builds and even the story. Speaking of the story, it's a lot better than Borderlands 1's story. Not perfect by any means, but it really does shine compared to the first. Once again, you play as one of the 4 Vault Hunters, and you're once again travelling to Pandora in search of a new vault. But while you're on this train ride, it's turned out to be a trap set by the main protagonist, Handsome Jack, who, by the way, is one of the best written video game villains of all time.
Miss Pierce, and please don't tell me it's Mrs. Pierce and break my heart, this train doesn't belong to you. So why don't you turn around and face me, Pumpkin?
This train was commandeered legally under the...
Holy nutballs! What happened to your freaking face?
Jack is also in search of the vault, so it's now your goal to reach it before him and stop whatever he is planning to do. Along the way, you'll meet plenty of new characters along with some old, even at points teaming up with the Vault Hunters from the previous game. The writing is a lot better as well. This game has some of the funniest dialogues I've seen in the game, but also some of the cringiest.
One of all is trademarked. Ugh, sod it. I'm so sick of coming up with names for, you know what? Bonafart. All of the bets right, we're calling them Bonafarts now.
Now, when it comes to the gameplay, it's Borderlands at its best. The game has a huge variety when it comes to character builds and guns. I was stuck between playing as Salvador the Gunzerker or Axton the Commando, and just ended up flipping between the two during my time. The guns are better in this game as well and have a lot more variety when it comes to them. One thing I really do like is certain bosses have unique legendary drops tied to it. This can be a blessing but also a curse, as you can end up spending hours farming one boss in hopes that they drop the gun you're looking for. But that's not even where it ends with the guns, as now each gun comes fitted with different weapon parts. I don't know a lot about this section of the game, but once again, it's another thing you can spend hours farming so you can get the perfect drop on a weapon. With there being many content creators I enjoy watching who have dedicated their channels around building the perfect character, farming endlessly for god roll loot. My main dislike when it comes to the gameplay of Borderlands 2 is the introduction of the slag element. Now basically what this does is when you use it on an enemy, it covers them in that slag element and then causes that enemy to take extra damage from another gun. I don't know if it's just me being nitpicky, because in your first initial playthrough you won't really use it, but on later playthroughs you find yourself relying on it quite a lot to take down almost every enemy in the game. As I said though, it could just me be nitpicking and not even be that big of an issue. Easy S tier. I almost didn't get around to making this video as I just tend to keep coming back to play more Borderlands 2. Okay, so I technically shouldn't really include this game because I didn't actually play it. But this was a mobile game that released in 2012 and I think released alongside Borderlands 2 or maybe just before, but it was delisted in 2016, making it impossible for me to play. However, there are a few workarounds and there is a way you can download it, but honestly, with it being a mobile game, I didn't care for it, so I didn't really bother. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say on it. By the looks of things, it was a RTS game where you play as the 4 Vault Hunters from the first game, and it had pretty average scores when it released. This is going into the unranked tier because, well, I can't rank it. Originally released in 2014 for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC before getting ported over to the PS4 and Xbox One in 2015, and this is probably going to be my least favourite Borderlands game to date. Which is a shame, as going into this game I'd only put about 3 hours or so into it, and it was really a whole new Borderlands experience for me. Now this doesn't necessarily mean that this game is bad, I just didn't enjoy it. In theory, this game should have been great. Coming off of the back of how good Borderlands 2 is, and I believe it's just running on the same engine, how could this have gone wrong? Well, simply put, this wasn't really for me, as the game's writing was honestly some of the cringiest, eye-rolling and unfunny dialogue I've had to listen to. Now, that's not to say all is bad, there's a few moments that did give me a slight chuckle.
John, I want an update on the Helios situation. Sir, I've got my best people working on a way to retake the station.
That's the Hyperion CEO. Is he as much of a bottle and glass arse as I hear?
Who the hell is that? That is the 10-year-old boy we hired to help us. You're fired, John.
You're introduced to some new characters, and again some familiar faces make a return. I was even surprised to see Roland and Lilith appear in this game, but some of these characters, especially Janie Springs or whatever fucking dumbass name is, make up some of the most unlikable and annoying characters I've ever had the displeasure to listen to. Although the writing may be bad for the most part when it comes to the characters, the story was actually pretty good and definitely a strong highlight of this game. For a change, this game isn't based on Pandora, but in fact on Pandora's moon, Elpis. As you guessed, you play as one of 4 Vault Hunters. Again, this later changed to 6 with DLCs being involved. This game was set between Borderlands 1 and 2, and the game basically revolves around helping Jack regain control of the Helios space station alongside seeing and assisting the rise of Hyperion and Jack becoming the ruler of it, and you even see why he is the way he is in Borderlands 2. Now when we talk about the gameplay, this is where things really just done it for me. At first, it feels the same as Borderlands 2, so it seems like you're in for a good time. But once you land on the moon, this is where things change. Obviously, as you are on the moon, things get a bit floaty due to the lack of gravity, and this is exactly how traversing and combat felt at this point. Floaty and slow. See, when I play Borderlands, I expect fast-paced action, and at times you can get that with this game, but for the most part things do just feel slow and at times can be boring. But not all is bad with the gameplay. I particularly enjoyed the new laser weapons that were added to the game, and I really enjoy playing as Athena, with her ultimate ability being that she just uses a shield and basically turns into Captain America at times. Overall, this game just failed to grip me, and I really didn't have that much of a fun time playing this. I'll have to put this game in C tier. I've bundled these together simply because I didn't play them. Now I know that this is controversial and these games have a huge cult following. Well, the first one does. I can't really say much about the second. But I really don't enjoy Telltale games. I've tried so many times, but for some reason they never clicked with me. I was going to give these games a go, but I just couldn't bring myself to, as I didn't want my negative feelings towards Telltale games get in the way of how good these games could potentially be. So with that said, I'm going to leave these as unranked, as these games just aren't really made for me. Originally released in 2019 for the Xbox One, PS4 and PC before getting ported over to the Xbox Series consoles and PS5 a year later. This game just fails to grab me, I'll be honest. Although the gameplay and visuals of this game are a huge leap forward for a franchise, the overall writing and story in this game really lets it down for me, almost at times making it unbearable to sit through. I really wanted to like this game, as I remember playing it when it first released, and I remember having similar feelings back then to do with the story, and over time, them feelings just clearly haven't changed. So once again, you play as one of 4 Vault Hunters who have made their way to Pandora to join the Crimson Raiders and hunt vaults. You end up meeting a cult called the Children of the Vault, led by their leaders, the Calypso twins, Irene and Troy. The story does start off pretty strong in fairness, as you're introduced to new and old characters once again. But after the first few hours, things take a change fast. Initially, the twins seem like pretty interesting antagonists to be fighting, as it's revealed they're sirens with the ability to steal other sirens' powers and use them for themselves. But then over time, the more you see them, the more you just hate them. And not in a way where you love to hate them, but you just hate them because they're annoying. And if the twins weren't annoying enough, this game introduces one of the most unlikable characters ever to be seen in any game I've played.
Cool if I take this. Thanks, later.
Now I won't go into it because I don't want to spoil anything from the games, but she is honestly unbearable, and I genuinely do hope that she doesn't play a big role in any future Borderlands games. The game isn't all bad, as the actual gameplay itself is such a huge step up from what we've had before. Everything just feels so fluid, and it sounds stupid to say, but it just feels more modern. Everything gameplay wise, from the sound design, quality of life features and the gunplay, are massively improved. Speaking of the gunplay, it's probably got some of the best I've ever seen in a shooter game before, with everything being as fluid as it is. On top of how nice the gunplay feels, you do get some very satisfying combat scenarios in this game. Something that this game does that is probably going to be a mainstay for the future is that you no longer just spend the game on Pandora, you travel to numerous different planets, which really does open up a lot of variety in visuals and enemies. And to add further more to the gameplay side of things, each character now has multiple different action skills to choose from. So in my case with Mose, I could choose what gun I wanted on my Titanfall-like mech while using it, or if I wanted to, I could just hand over control of it to the AI. Overall, Borderlands 3 isn't terrible, but at the same time, it's not great. It's got really good gameplay that's really let down by its writing and story, which makes the game hard for me to actually beat. Story aside, I really did want to enjoy this game. As I said, the gameplay is some of the best this series has seen, but something just felt off, and oftentimes I felt myself just feeling really bored of playing. I guess a lot of it comes from following how good Borderlands 2 was for a lot of us, and it's always going to have a huge mountain to climb because of the expectations that the second game set. Borderlands 3 is going to go into B tier. Now, although that's the end of the Borderlands games by name, there are still 2 more games to cover that technically fit the bill. Now, I said technically because although this game and the next take place in the Borderlands universe and follow the same gameplay loop, they aren't Borderlands games by name, so I won't go into them for too long. Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep was originally a DLC for Borderlands 2 that got its own standalone release in 2021, and this was just to gather hype for the next game to be released, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. There's not really much to say about this game. It's obviously pretty short as it's technically a DLC, but there's still plenty of side missions to do, and the story itself is actually very good and has a pretty touching moment at the end. And it still amazes me how we went from Borderlands 2's writing to Borderlands 3. The game is set within a tabletop game called Bunkers and Badasses, which is the Borderlands equivalent of Dungeons and Dragons, with Tina being the game master. I can't go into what the story is about because of spoiler reasons for the second game, but just know it's actually really good. But anyway, I was in 2 minds about actually ranking this, as it's just DLC released as a standalone game. The gameplay is exactly the same as Borderlands 2, as well as the Vault Hunters you choose at the start. But with that being said, I'm going to put it in A tier, just behind Borderlands 1. It's more Borderlands 2, which is always a plus, and I really enjoyed this game. Released in 2022 for the Xbox One, Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 and PC, this game is the sequel to the Assault on Dragon's Keep DLC. I actually really liked this game a lot, which is weird because I remember when this first came out in 2022, I rushed to buy it on PC and was looking forward to playing it as I had the day off work. But a few hours of gameplay had passed and I just felt really underwhelmed and was not enjoying the game at all. Fast forward to now, and for some reason it's completely flipped. I really enjoyed this game, and I'm not entirely sure why I disliked it when it first released. So as mentioned, this game is a sequel to Assault on Dragon's Keep, and as a result it is based on the same Bunkers and Badasses universe. One thing I have to say is that while the story itself isn't that amazing, I definitely enjoyed it more than Borderlands 3. The gameplay is the same as the third game, but this time the weapons are replaced with ones that are more fitting for the occasion. And there's actually like a character create section, which honestly was really cool to see and something that I hope gets carried over into future games. One thing I have to say that I absolutely loved was the overworld sections in the game. So where you're traveling from point A to point B, you'll basically be moving your character around on the game board in between locations. And it's such a unique and fitting way of traversal in this game. Add in some things that make you feel more immersed with things like cheese puffs blocking your path or being surrounded by a river of orangeade. Overall, I love this game so much so I'm going to put it into A tier again, just behind Borderlands 1, but ahead of Assault on Dragon's Keep. Now, that's my list of every Borderlands game ranked. If you agree, leave a like, and if you disagree, let me know why in the comments. Once again, sorry for technically not including the Telltale games. Maybe one day I'll give them a visit and update this ranking afterwards. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.